Welcome everyone to we have been on break, so bear with me for a minute. Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, Tumwater City Council meeting, and we will do roll call.
Councilmember Leetta Dahlhoff. Present. Councilmember Angela Jefferson.
Present.
Councilmember Joan Cathy.
Present.
Councilmember Eileen Swarthout.
She is excused this evening.
Councilmember Michael Althauser.
Present.
Councilmember Peter Agabe.
Present.
Councilmember Kelly Von Holtz.
Present.
Mayor Debbie Sullivan.
And I'm present. And join me in our salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first item is a special item, which is a proclamation for Overdose Awareness Day, which is August 31st, and Councilmember Dahlhoff will read that proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas observed on August 31st every year, International Overdose Awareness Day seeks to create a better understanding of overdose, reduce the stigma of drug-related deaths, and create change that reduces the harms associated with drug use. And whereas overdose deaths occur in all communities among people from every walk of life. And whereas overdose deaths are preventable and can be caused by alcohol, over-the-counter medicines, stimulants, opioids, and other substances. And whereas, like many places across Washington state, we need to continue to treat drug-related harm as a public health issue and invest in best practices that save lives and build communities. And whereas anyone can visit the statewide resource, www.stopoverdose.org, to obtain naloxone, an opioid overdose reversal medication. And there's a recovery helpline at 1-866-789-1511 for 24-hour information and help. And whereas Tumwater stands behind those who have lost loved ones to an overdose and who have a substance use disorder and are diligently working towards recovery. And whereas, or now and therefore, Debbie Sullivan, the mayor of the city of Tumwater, does hereby proclaim August 31st, 2024, International Overdose Awareness Day, and calls upon the people of the city of Tumwater to join with her in raising awareness around drug overdose by reducing stigma through initiatives related to education, prevention, treatment, and recovery support for substance use disorder.
Great. And we have 3 individuals in the audience that I will be presenting this proclamation to. And you also have ability to say a few words if you would like. So I will come meet you at the podium.
You can all stand there. It's okay.
So here is the proclamation and also a small token, pen, city pen.
I know.
Oh, thank you very much and go ahead.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. I'm Katie Strozik. I do opioid and overdose response at Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. I just want to first off say thank you for once again issuing this proclamation. I believe this is the 3rd, maybe 4th year in a row that Tumwater has issued this in great company too, along with City of Olympia, City of Lacey, and through the Board of County Commissioners. I do want to give a special thank you to Tumwater. Tumwater is the only jurisdiction who has actively participated in the Thurston County Opioid Response Task Force for the last 5 years. They also are the only jurisdiction to continue to participate in the Thurston County Opioid Response Task Force above and beyond just the task force meeting, including special projects and work group involvement. So a special thank you to Councilmember Dahlhoff for going truly above and beyond what any jurisdiction does, but also just showing up and continuing to do the hard work with us. I know that it's a lot of work. International Overdose Awareness Day is August 31st every single year. It is an international event, and it's meant to be a day to really recognize individuals who have lost their lives to a fatal drug overdose, but also break down the stigma around drug use, drug overdoses, recognize the grief and loss that's left behind for folks and loved ones once they have someone pass from an overdose, and acknowledge and recognize folks who have responded to a drug overdose by administering naloxone, calling 911, doing rescue breaths, all of those things. So in our community for Thurston County, we have 2 events this year. We have an event this Friday on the 23rd from 10 to 1. It's specific to pregnant and parenting populations. So resources for families, families who are reunifying, maybe have children in kinship care, folks who are actively pregnant. We also will have free naloxone distribution and overdose response training at that event. It's from 10 to 1 this Friday at Harbor House, downtown Olympia. And then we're doing a second event next Friday on August 30th. There will be a resource fair portion from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then a group coordinated memorial walk from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and that'll be at Heritage Park, downtown Olympia next Friday. I also have flyers for both of those events as well. International Overdose Awareness Day is really important to me, not just because I've worked in this field for almost 10 years, but I personally have lost many folks to a fatal drug overdose, and I've had the experience of having to respond to a loved one who was actively overdosing as well. So I just really want to thank City of Tumwater again for recognizing this as an issue in our community, bringing it forward as a priority, and not just bringing it forward on paper at one council meeting a year, but actually showing up and doing the hard work side by side with us at Public Health. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, next item is public comment. And do we have a sign-in sheet? And do we have anyone registered online?
We have no one online.
Okay, so we'll get the sign-in sheet. All right, we have one individual signed up, Pamela Hanson. Come to the podium, name, address, and 3 minutes.
Thank you, Pamela Hanson, PO Box 14521, Tumwater, Washington. I have 3 items, started out with one. First of all, congratulations to the Overdose Awareness Proclamation and the efforts that go along with that. I have a different experience around drugs, and that is deter. I have been a licensed security officer in more than one location where I have to try and deter any of that from happening. And in that way, I have affected change, I believe, and also have provided readiness to call when there is a need of assistance. Back then, there wasn't naloxone. So the only thing we had was fire and rescue. The item tied to that is the mushrooms. The City of Olympia has addressed the mushroom issue and what seems like partial decriminalization or low priority as far as enforcement and investigation. I would like to state my opinion against that. I don't think it should be encouraged or tolerated. I think it should be deterred and that resources be promoted. So to avoid that at all costs, in my opinion. Also, when the lake was being drained, there was an opportunity to walk into the middle of the river by the old brew house and historical park. So I got a look at the drain that was going into the river and got pictures of that and the goo that had settled, which is unfortunate, and I'll find time in the next 2 weeks to get that to you. I don't think anything will happen in that time frame. The other thing is there was another photographer there at the time that had made it out to the middle of the river and actually further up, and described the old brew house as a needle house, that it looked like a needle house. And I could tell from where I was standing on the rock bed that there were more broken windows, more graffiti than I had ever seen before. And there are security cameras there that are live. So my concern is that is a haven there. It's further away from people than the brewery. and could be harboring those people and causing more of a problem for the brewery and the surrounding area because of its location. I may be assuming too much, but I think that we don't have an adequate amount of police officers to always be going down there. But I think something should happen to assess it, to give a report to the people so that we know what is there right next to the park at night. And last on resolution,
Can you?
Item
wrap
number
it up
E.
quickly?
huh?
Can you wrap it up? quickly?
Yeah, item number E, there is no asset manager named, but that is the person responsible for making that determination. So on all three documents, there was no asset manager named for the surplus. So I think there should be a name placed with that somehow as a technicality. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to do public comment? All right. I do not see anyone else. So with that, we will go to the consent calendar. And so with that, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Althauser, seconded by Councilmember Von Holtz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. All right, the motion carries. So with that, we approve the minutes of the joint council meeting and planning commission meeting work session that was held on July 9th. Approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of July 16th, payment vouchers, resolution R 2024-012, Percival Creek Passage Barrier Removal, number 22-1161. And then resolution number R 2024-013, surplus property. Small works contract with West Coast Fence Pros LLC for the Palermo Security Fencing Replacement Project. Also, small works contract for Construct Inc. for the Crosby House Foundation repair. Three Lakes Crossing oversizing agreement for the Copper Ridge LLC. And then appointments to advisory board. And first, before I say this, we have all but all of the boards and commissions filled for the moment, except for the Civil Service Commission, and we're going to be doing an interview for that soon. So I am very excited. So with those appointments is the advisory board appointment of Charlie Schneider, former city council member for the Board of Parks and Recreation. Rob Palar for the Historic Preservation Commission. Gina Kotek for the Planning Commission, as well as Melissa Paulson, who is here, and I will introduce Cody Perez, also for the Planning Commission. So I wanted to welcome Melissa, and I will welcome you if you're up to it to come to the podium and say a few words if you would like to, because I think you come with a very good and unique background. So.
That's one way to put it. Yeah, so I'm a land use planner by trade, and I actually work for a local jurisdiction as their community development director. So I consistently work with our city council and our mayor and city manager in regard to moving our city forward. And I live in Tumwater, so it's really important that I have this I'm very proud to have this opportunity to give back to the community that I live in. And bring that wealth of knowledge that I feel like I have to the planning commission. So I do appreciate the appointment.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it. So we have some really great new boards and commission members. And so this is taken a while to get all of these boards and commissions filled, and hopefully we can keep everybody filled for a week or two. All right, next item is council consideration is the Urban and Community Forest Grant Acceptance Agreement with the River Network, and Alyssa Woods will be doing the presentation.
Good evening. Melanie, could you please bring the presentation up? Thank you for having me. I presented this to the Public Works Committee a few weeks ago, and they were so excited that they wanted to make sure that it came on the considerations calendar. So this is a federal grant that is being passed through a nonprofit called River Network. And the project has a number of different milestones that I'll go into in detail. But something that's important to note for all of the milestones is that they only apply in the orange areas of this map. So those are the EPA or Environmental Protection Agency disadvantaged communities. That is a map tool used by the federal government to identify areas that are eligible for Inflation Reduction Act funding, of which this grant is coming from. That uses federal CGIST or Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. Any census tracts that are scoring a 90th percentile against the state or nation for environmental justice, according to the EPA EJ Screen Tool, or areas that have native lands, like reservations. So all of the areas in orange can be, the grant funding will be applied to the orange area only. There will be a slide at the end that talks about how we make sure that the whole city is covered for these kinds of programs. So there are 5 major project milestones for this grant. The first is to install air temperature data loggers and heat islands. The second is to hire a full-time urban forester. The third is to plan and launch a canopy equity program. Fourth is plan and launch a tree assessment assistance program. And the fifth is street tree trimming grants. So milestone 1 is those air temperature data loggers. The photo on the right here is land surface temperature of our city, showing areas that have extreme to moderate urban heat island effect. You can see that we have a lot of it in the same areas that is in the orange map here. So thankfully those overlap pretty well. We'll use available data to identify low canopy, low tree canopy in most extreme heat impacted areas in the disadvantaged communities of Tumwater and install at least 6 air temperature data loggers. We will track the air temperature. We have a goal to reduce the air temperature in the disadvantaged communities, and we will install these by the end of this year, should the council decide to move forward with this grant. That's our first milestone. Our second, very exciting one to me, is to hire a full-time urban forester. That full-time urban forester will spend at least 50% of their time working towards an equitable distribution of urban and community resources that benefit that orange area of the map, the disadvantaged communities in Tumwater. The other 50% of their time will be paid for by city matching funds, allowing them to also complete work in non-disadvantaged communities within the city. Metrics for this is number of permits, landscaping plan and development applications reviewed, number of trees planted in disadvantaged communities, number of trees assessed in disadvantaged communities, with a goal to look at least 250 permit landscaping plan and development applications within the 2 years that there's funding for this. I think it's 3 years for this particular aspect. 250 trees planted, 50 trees assessed, and with the goal to hire by March 30th, 2025. And the tree board has already looked at a draft job description for this position and given some comments. So should the city council decide to move this forward, we have a running start for hiring this person. Milestone 3 is the Canopy Equity Program, and that's a free tree establishment program to expand the community forest in the disadvantaged communities of Tumwater, both on city-owned and on private property. So that would include a tree establishment of trees, compost, mulch, and watering bags. So currently the tree board on Arbor Day gives away trees or shrubs. This would be building that program and making it targeted to that disadvantaged community area of Tumwater and making sure that not only are people receiving the trees, but also supported materials to make sure that those trees can live and thrive. Participants would be required to attend a workshop, which would be virtual or in person, on proper tree care before they can come and get their tree. And we'll be tracking the number of trees distributed. 250 trees is the goal, but it's likely going to be significantly more. I recently learned about an Arbor Day Foundation project that can help us identify where the trees will be located so that we have right tree, right place. And their costs are significantly lower, so we might be able to exceed the 250. Milestone 4 is tree assessment assistance. So that's to develop and launch a program for residents of the disadvantaged community in Tumwater to request that the city urban forester provide a tree health assessment on their property free of charge. The goal of this one is to help people become less afraid of the trees that are on their property and have the proper information to do decision making. A lot of people are afraid of trees on their property, thinking that it might fall. This would make it so that they can get a free assessment from a qualified arborist to give them some information on that tree. With the goal of having 50 tree health assessments provided, that's 25 each year. And the last Yes, the last milestone is the street tree trimming grants, and this is something that came up as a recommendation from the Planning Commission when we were going through the earlier stages of revising our tree protection ordinance and street tree ordinance. Which would be targeted small grant program in which residents of disadvantaged communities of Tumwater can apply for in-kind contracted services to trim street trees adjacent to their property. This would be prioritized for low and moderate income residents of the disadvantaged communities, as well as street trees in disadvantaged communities causing conflicts and or trees in disadvantaged communities that have been assessed by the city urban forester and found to need this maintenance. And this is limited to street trees. And this would not include sidewalk repairs. This is just making sure that the trees are properly maintained so that people and vehicles can traverse safely around these street trees. We have a goal of having 50 applications and 40 trees trimmed, and we'll see how this goes. So this grant covers the cost of milestones 1, 3, 4, and 5 in full, and 50% of milestone 2, which is the urban forester position. I have included in my budget requests that have gone to the mayor and the city administrator for this match for the remainder of the urban forester salary and benefits. That is not covered by the grant. That would allow them to work in the entire city and not just the disadvantaged communities aspect. So my recommended action here, if you're interested, is authorize the mayor to sign the subaward agreement with the River Network for the City of Tumwater Urban Forestry Capacity and Equity Project. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about this.
Any questions? Councilmember Dolpha?
Thanks, Mayor. Alyssa, I love this idea. A couple things that came up as you were presenting for the milestones. And this has been ongoing. And it goes back to Councilmember Kathy's comments in the past regarding there's been times when even in my own neighborhood where one day there were trees and the next day the trees were not there and no permit was sought out to remove those trees. Is there an opportunity in this process to measure, track trees that have been removed? Because we've never been able to actually circle back. Is there a way to actually identify those areas or track them and then see if trees could be planted in those areas? That was one of the questions.
Yes, sir. So for monitoring outside of the complaints that we get for code enforcement,
Right.
we can definitely include that in the job description. I think that that's reasonable for them as they're moving throughout the city to identify if there's places where there once was a tree and now there is not, and to that will be the person looking at the tree removal waivers and that kind of stuff to be that person. Well, there wasn't a tree. There was a tree. There wasn't a tree.
Right.
Was there a permit? Let's move it on to code.
I know it's felt unsettled to like Councilmember Kathy that there's no circling back or follow through with, and you can't take it back, right? But what can we do moving forward? And this seems like a great opportunity to get some baseline. The other question I had is, in this process and just overall in general, there's recently at one neighborhood that the developer contracted out to a landscaper who planted some trees and there was a wrong tree in the wrong place. They've left, they're still there. 6 years later, there's challenges. Is there an opportunity with this to, how do we circle back with that maintenance or the unintended consequences of the wrong tree in the wrong place?
I would defer to community development for that particular detail.
But somewhere for that to be tracked to say, is this an issue? Because we know there's 2 developments now that are having challenges with the developer choosing a landscaper who chose those trees. And now there's issues and it's stuck to the homeowners association. How do we capture that?
Are they street trees or are they trees that are in a common area in the homeowners association?
One most recent example that I've heard, Councilmember Swart has another example, like on Tumwater Hill. This one is Black Lake Palisades of the cherry trees. There's around 15 on the outside where they were informed the city is in charge of the sidewalks, but they're in charge of the trees surrounding their development, but it's uprooting all the sidewalks.
Yes. So, not sure the specifics, but generally speaking, if there was a requirement for planting of trees in a common area or some area that's the responsibility of the homeowners association. I'm not sure what the enforcement would be in terms of the trees were required by the plat and they're no longer there. I'm
Right.
assuming it would fall through a same code enforcement process that we have for anything.
Just the overall, like, there's more and more concerns coming from newer developments of like, hey, this tree was planted and now I don't have access to this sidewalk. How do we track that with this new staff position to go, maybe in the list of approved trees, there's like a choose your own adventure of like, if this is your sidewalk, don't choose this cherry tree. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
a way to incentivize. So we remove these unintended consequences for homeowners associations who do not have the funds to
Yeah,
fix
right.
this.
I think the benefit, the overall benefit, and it's maybe an indirect way to answer your question, but the overall benefit of having this particular expertise on staff is that person is going to be the one that's actually reviewing the landscape plans and all of those things through the development permit review process. So they're going to have better knowledge.
We know they're
to-
like check and balance.
Right. They've
I love
got
that.
the scientific, technical knowledge to be able to make recommendations about whether or not those landscape plans are appropriate or not.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yes, and in the process that we've been in for updating the street tree code and the street tree list, we do have in the current draft that is floating around with staff, minimum planting area size, so that if it's a 6-foot area, you can only plant X, Y,
Right.
these species of trees. If it's 8 foot, then these are the more appropriate trees, and getting more specific, as well as removing a lot of trees that may be on our approved street tree list now that actually aren't good.
Right.
We live and learn trees are long lived. It takes a while to learn a lesson. What trees are better for different scenarios, and we're eliminating a number of trees from the current street tree list in the current version that staff is working on.
Awesome. Thank you. This is exciting.
Expertise is helpful.
Councilmember Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. Parts of this sound really good to me, and other parts a little different. But in the areas that we're calling, heat challenged, or I guess, are they considered low economic areas? Is that part of it?
So the disadvantaged communities as defined by the EPA, those are areas that are either CGIST, which we don't have any CGIST tracks. So really the ones that the index that applies to us is any environmental protection agency, environmental justice screening tool, any census tract that is rating 90th percentile or above compared to the nation or the state. So any of their environmental justice indexes, if it's higher than 90th percentile, it's that orange area that's considered a disadvantaged community.
Again, so it's about heat, it's not about
No. It's about a number of different environmental justice indexes. So that could be proximity to traffic, it could be air quality, it could be proximity to Superfund sites or actively polluting industries. It could be lower life expectancy, higher cancer rates, lower economic well-being. Those are all aspects that are considered in the EJ screen indexes. So it's social, environmental, spatial.
So the areas that you showed on the map fit some of those areas? Is that what you did? You went through and looked at the ones from the EPA and decided what fit in Tumwater?
I tried a number of different map tools to try to incorporate as much of Tumwater as possible into this funding. The EPA IRA disadvantaged communities was the tool that the U.S. Forest Service accepted that had the largest area of Tumwater included. I also showed a map of urban heat islands in the city. I'm not sure if you're referring to that separately or that in unison with the disadvantaged communities map.
You're asking me?
Yes, just so I can make sure I'm answering your question.
I'm just looking at the map that you gave today and wondering how that was decided, and you're telling me, you're answering that.
Okay.
I don't know about you're asking, well, are we doing that on the islands that we have?
Melody,
Robbie?
could you please bring up the presentation so I can make sure that we're talking about the same map? Sorry, council member, I figure a visual will help.
That's okay.
Thank you. So there were two maps. There's this one, which is where we can apply the funding in the orange area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the EPA IRA disadvantaged communities. So that's using those EJ screen indexes that are social, environmental, or spatial. And then I have a different map, which is this one, which does not apply to the funding per se. This is where the urban heat islands exist in the city. And there is some overlap, especially around the I-5 corridor and the airport. But they're two separate maps.
Okay. I guess it's hard for me to see those maps. It was when I was looking at them, without landmarks. So, but we can get back to that. So that's quite a few areas, quite a bit of
Yes.
work to do there. The other thing I'm wondering is, how does this coordinate, or does it, or should there be a different tact maybe that is taken regarding our tree ordinance that we're trying to get tightened up and redone and up to date, and according to some of these things that you're talking about? How has that been discussed?
Yes, so I imagine the urban forester will be very much involved in any code revisions. I know that planning is currently waiting for an additional planner in order to restart the code revision process on those 3 sections of code. Hopefully we get that person sooner than the urban forester, which is after the beginning of the new year, the urban forester. But they would very likely work very closely together, because then we would have an on-staff expert in tree-related issues that can make sure that we're making the right decisions and suggesting the best language.
Yeah, because this tree ordinance is somewhat old compared to what we want to do here. and
Yes.
How we want to follow up and track things and so forth. So I think that's a must, and I think it gives us who are working on it some more guidance. And the one other thing that Councilmember Dahlhoff brought up, that I've brought up probably way too many times, is that when someone gets a permit, I don't know if it has to do with a staff thing or whatever, but I'm wondering if always someone goes out and looks at the tree or the trees or the area that people want to clear, or if it fits in this thing where you can take down so many trees a year or so many trees every 3 years. We just take them down regardless of the size or whatever. Would this mean that if you applied for a permit to remove a tree or trees, that would be followed up on before the tree comes down?
So I know currently with the tree removal waiver, which is the X number, I think it's 6 trees that can be removed every 3 years, that we do not go out in person to those sites. However, there is a photograph that's required to be sent with the permit application, so that we can make sure that we're able to identify the tree if it does or does not get removed, or if there's a future permit for the same tree that had a permit to remove it before, but is still there and that's not counted. But I do know for the development projects, the land clearing, that we do go out and inspect. Whether or not that inspector is a trained arborist is, I don't think the case, but we often probably bring our city forester, and we also accept the expertise of the foresters that are providing the reports that are associated with the development itself, but that we do go out in person for those. And this urban forester would be that person in this case that would be going out and making sure that the tree reports are accurate and truthful and being applied as such.
The request to take down a tree, we would
Or-
see the tree before, or they would see the photograph and have a question about it, or large trees are coming down on property. I mean, big high trees, 200 feet, big, huge, beautiful trees are coming down on property. And I've called in to ask, and they have told me that they have a permit because it's private property. So it's not helping the heat index. So I'm just really concerned about this. We've had an issue with this for many years. And so I'm hoping that what you're talking about here tightens this up tremendously, because it doesn't do any good to plant just street trees and let people take down very important trees other places. Or how do we replace trees? I mean, there's still lots of questions. I'm really happy to hear about what you're presenting here and the direction we're moving. I'm just giving you the horror stories of the past that still need, I think, some special attention, along with where we're going, because looks like we're going a really good place. So.
And I know that council has not seen the drafts that have been sitting for a while we were working on the wildland urban interface, but the drafts that I've seen, which are not final, not vetted through planning commission, not at all, They move away from the tree removal waiver permit and they have a tree credit system that's based on the DBH of the tree with higher protections for larger diameter trees. So the edits that I've seen so far that again are not accepted and have not been vetted by the planning commission, they've only been, it's the first draft that's been seen by staff. It is moving in a direction that I believe that you would like, council member, in terms
Very
of
good.
protecting larger trees, making sure that there's more accountability, making sure that it's more clear to people the different kinds of permit processes that you have to go through for the different kinds of activities that you might want to do in areas where trees are existing currently.
Very good. There was one removed in my neighborhood that increased the heat because it was a large tree that shaded many properties, and it was taken down. But anyway, you're touching on several things that can be added to why we need to have some good guidelines here for trees and for heat and for things in the proper place. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming tonight and for taking my questions.
Of course.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, City Administrator.
I just wanted to follow up on that and reiterate again that, so the code is being evaluated and reviewed. Having an urban forester on staff to help with that review will be helpful. It's my understanding the consultant team that is helping to put those together includes qualified urban foresters to assist with that, but having somebody internal as a staff person is absolutely important. The conditions that you're talking about, council member, when a tree comes down, when a permit is required, all of those things need to be clearly identified in the code. And so having an urban forester to help draft the code is helpful. But most importantly, it's in implementation of the code itself. So right now we have Sound Urban Forestry is our tree professional as we're required to have by code, by the current code. That's a contracted position. And that's what he has been doing under the auspices of this current code. Having a new updated code and an on-staff urban forester, that person is going to be doing the work that was previously contracted out. So they are absolutely going to be the ones that are reviewing plans, permits, anything that's required to be obtained prior to taking a tree out. They're going to be looking at the plans for putting them in, what are the appropriate ones. And then if our code enforcement has a need for a subject matter expert based on a complaint about a tree coming down, then that urban forester, just like our stormwater folks, are the subject matter experts that go out on complaints about, water quality impacts in a stream, that this position will be able to do that. So it's actually really great to be able to have the qualifications of a position on staff to be able to work more directly and more cooperatively and more collaboratively within city staff, and to have a better understanding of the overall development projects and things that are happening in the city, as opposed to just having somebody who's brought in for this instance or that instance and doesn't have the full picture.
I totally agree. And is this on a work plan? I mean, is this on a if we pass this tonight, is all of this high on the list of getting this done and working this?
The request that's before you tonight is to accept and approve the signature on the grant agreement, which essentially obligates us to have the match that's been identified. And so that's one action. That's the first action tonight. And then the development of the budget includes the request from Water Resources and Sustainability for that position, for the half that would be the city's half of that position in their current budget request for the 25-26 biennial budget.
But we can't continue working, or we guess we could continue working. I don't know, on the tree ordinance that these people will work off of until we hire someone else other than this forester?
I think what Alyssa was referring to is that we have been trying very hard to hire a senior level planner that can assist with all of the ongoing long range planning projects that we currently have, particularly since we're in the mandated periodic review process. That's what we're waiting for in terms of the code revisions themselves. Is having enough staff to be able to do that.
And we do not. Is that what you're saying? We do not have?
That's my understanding. I can, get back to you and clarify for you. At one point in time, we had consultants helping us. But then we did put a hold on it based on the wildland urban interface question that was our staff diligently walked through the legislative process and the building code amendment process. And now we're waiting to try and figure out, now we have to get the work actually done, re-energized around those tree ordinances and the updates.
It seems like if we get this grant and move forward with this, what has been presented tonight, which is very good. It's hard to do without ordinances that are up to date or redone or tightened up or done whatever we need to do to kind of work alongside or match or have something for them to work off of. So I think it's all kind of tied together, kind of urgent together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the senior planner position that we're trying to hire is an approved authorized position that was approved actually in last year's budget amendment at the end of the year. We've been unable to find a person to fill that position. So not for a lack of trying. I think we've offered 2 or 3 different times to different people. But we're doing the best we can to try and get people hired. Hopefully an urban forester is easier to hire than a planner at this point.
Offer them a place to stay in the trees. Thank you, both of you, for answering my questions. I do appreciate it.
Great. Councilmember Dollhoff had another question.
Thank you, Mayor. The one thing is, I appreciate the forward movement. And then the challenge always is, well, what do we do with the current state, right? So there's a development that has been clear cut when you're going on Cursup, like the Trosper, like the back way to Trosper, which impacted wetland. It was completely a clear cut. And you can never go back from that, right? So if we know that we're going in this direction, we know that we're updating it and focusing on our intentions of what we want to see, yet we're clear cutting land and impacting wetlands. It's counterintuitive to me. So what do we do when we're in this gray area, when we're trying to go this direction, and then we see clear cutting?
Again, I'm going to have to apologize because I don't know the specific development project that you're referencing. Any development project that is applied for and is underway under the existing regulations that we have in place is allowed to move forward under those
Right.
existing
I get that,
regulations.
right? And that's always the challenge. And I'm wondering, as we move forward in the comprehensive plan elements and talking about like tax credits and multifamily tax exemptions, what does it look like to incentivize green development? Like, what does that look like? So you don't clear cut. You're strategic about the placement of those trees because we'll never get those trees back. That's always like when you're juggling everything and you can do it. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that we should do it. That's where the challenge I'm having is when you drive by and everything's gone. And like, is that what we really want? I don't. So how do we document that and track that? And when we get these projects that go, is there another way besides just clearing the land?
Yeah. And the most important thing when you're talking about having an impact on actual development projects on the ground is to ensure that your regulations are clear and meet the intent or the goal of what it
Right.
is that you have. Absent that, we have an obligation in quasi-judicial permit review processes to apply the law. And if somebody makes an application and they comply with all of the standards,
Understood.
then unfortunately, that
Shows we have room for improvement. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
All right. Any
Thank
other
you, Lisa.
questions or comments? And I would definitely be interested in entertaining a motion if anyone is moved to do that. Councilmember Von Holst, did you want?
Sure. I would like to move that we authorize the mayor to sign the sub-award agreement with River Network. Am I reading the right one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The City of Tumwater Urban Forestry Capacity and Equity Project. The Public Works Committee recommended this agreement for council consideration at their July 18th, 2024 meeting.
And I second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Von Holst and seconded by Councilmember Jefferson. Any discussion on the motion? All right. With that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Yay.
and looking forward to the grant and the staffing. All right. So next item is our committee reports. The first one is Public Health and Safety Committee and Councilmember Agavi.
So we have been on recess and I haven't seen any agenda for our September 9th meeting. So at this point in time, there's no need to report.
Great, thank you. Next one is General Government Committee, Councilmember Althauser.
Thank you, Mayor, but similar to the Public Health and Safety Committee, we've been on recess and have not had a meeting recently. We will be meeting next month.
Great. This is going to be a standard theme today. Then Public Works Committee, that's Councilmember Swarthout. Is anyone a Councilmember Althauser?
We will be meeting, we haven't met since our last meeting, but we will be meeting on Thursday. And we have a number of items on the agenda for that meeting. There's a right of entry agreement for the Belmore Street property. An interesting item on the transfer of interest in brewery assets that we'll go over as well. A fiber optic agreement with WSDOT. That's just an amendment to an agreement that we already have. And then we'll also be reviewing the 2023 pavement maintenance project and looking at awarding additional construction funds for that.
Great. Budget and Finance will be meeting tomorrow, and those items will be the a presentation on debt financing, audit engagement letter that will be presented by the Finance Department and the Executive Department, full-time employee adjustment and the new positions of an Economic Development Coordinator. And so we will be discussing those. Those items will be coming to full council, but we'll be reviewing those in the Budget and Finance Committee. So with that, we will now go to Mayor City Administrator report and start with the City Administrator.
Thank you, council members. It's nice to see you all again. I hope you had a nice break. Just a quick update. I imagine that you noticed when you drove in this evening that the Israel Road pedestrian project has begun. It started last Monday. That is primarily replacement and removal of sidewalks, including those sidewalks that have been buckled by the wrong tree in the wrong place. And then repaving and correcting all of that work that we did last year in terms of replacing all our underground utilities. So it is a big project. It's going to really put a nice bow on Israel Road and all of the work we've been doing over the last couple of years in terms of construction. The good news on that project is, and you always look for silver linings. So we are impacting schools and the start of school. But the good news is with 3 lanes of traffic, we're going to be able to keep people moving because we'll just close 1 lane at a time. And so that's good news. I'll take it where I can find it. And just as a heads up, then the Linwood project, which is a very similar project, replacing and adding some sidewalks on Linwood Avenue from Susitna to 2nd Street, 2nd Avenue, excuse me, that starts next Monday. So be looking for similar type of activity there. Traffic control is going to be a little bit more difficult because it is just a 2-lane road. So there will be some having to close a lane and allow people through, but we are hopeful that we'll have a nice smooth project. Both of those projects should be wrapping up hopefully in terms of Israel Road in time for us to do paving in October or so. And so we're going to hope for a nice long Indian summer. Then on to some fun stuff. Brewfest was this past weekend. We had about 4,000 people. It did end a little bit early due to thunderstorms, but I understand that everyone was okay and it was still lots of fun, and we continue to get lots of good feedback from both vendors as well as people in attendance. So kudos to everyone involved. We talked about at the mayor's meeting this afternoon with everybody that the events that the city does, particularly 4th of July and Brewfest, really involve participation across the city organization in terms of who participates. Public Works, obviously Parks and Rec facilities, and everybody in between. So kudos to all of our staff that work really hard and late into the night to make that a fun event. One last quick update. So the mayor's proposed budget has typically been available by the end of August. It is going to be somewhat delayed by a couple of weeks, and I will work to try and get you a better number or a date specific in the next few days and hopefully by your Friday update. We are working hard on the budget. We've approached it a little bit differently this year in terms of how directors are involved and how the final preliminary budget from the mayor is developed. And so we're working through some of those challenges, and we are going to bring that to you as soon as we can. In the meantime, we are going to have our budget workshops on the work sessions in September and into October. We're also talking about potentially having more voluntary come if you'd like, or if you're available, budget brown bags. So a lunchtime event. This is something that I believe was previously available in many years past. So we'll make sure that council members, as well as boards and commission members, as well as the public, are aware of those. You can bring your lunch, and we'll dive into the budget if you really like to do that kind of thing. And that's all I have. Unless you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions? Not seeing any. Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So part of some of my updates is I've had 2 Intercity Transit Authority Board meetings since our last meeting. And I'm not going to go into great detail, but couple of the items that we did approve was they graduated another class of drivers, which is great. We're getting like to full capacity of drivers for intercity transit. And so the class of 24-03, they're on the road, they passed their courses, and they're now driving buses. And then we were also introduced to the operator class of 2024. And I do believe that they're going to try to do one more class with bus drivers so that they can make sure that the services are at full capacity. Because they were going to extend service, and then COVID hit, and then kind of put us back a little bit. So we also, Intercity Transit also purchased the property at 210 Olympia Avenue Northeast, which is down by the downtown transfer station, downtown station. That was a vacant lot there that they've been using for parking. And so that will provide a little bit of additional expansion area if needed. We're doing the Citizens Advisory Group is going to be doing some applications for Citizen Advisory Committee members for Intercity Transit. And those are members that are citizens that do, it'd be similar to the Planning Commission. So they're advisory members that are very involved. So if anyone is interested, the applications are out there, and we will be doing interviews I think in the next month or so. I also, some other meeting that we attended, I've been on the I-5 Martin to Marvin to Tumwater Executive Advisory Board. And so we've had a meeting with the next part of the SEPA review for the Martin Way, the Deschutes River Bridge, that part of it. So we're starting another series of meetings on that. And so I have been attending that as part of the Executive Advisory Board. And we've had other members can probably talk to the Deschutes Estuary meetings. We've been having several of those. So that's moving forward. And at some point when we get a little bit more solid, and I will certainly let Councilmember Althauser mention anything that he might want to, because he's also been attending those meetings. Fun things is National Night Out was a great, huge success. I was tried to be more reasonable this year and only did 3 events instead of trying to do 5 like I did one year, and then trimmed it down to 4. 3 seems to be the magic number to be able to actually spend time at the different events. So that was really fun, and it's a really great community event. And it always happens on primary election nights, so it's hard to be in 2 places at once. I also attended the Thurston County Fair welcoming ceremony, which was fun. They had a little competition for mayors and commissioners and the sheriff. And so it was really fun competition. Of course, the sheriff won. And then I also got to be a judge for cupcakes this year. It is amazing, you know, how talented people are. And I was just glad that there wasn't like a dozen of them because that would have been really difficult. So anyway, those are just some of the fun things that's been kind of going on this year. So that's the end of my report. So I will now go to council member reports, and I'm assuming since we've been on break that there may not be as many as normal, but why don't I start in online in Zoom? So Councilmember Gabi, do you want to start?
I do not have any report.
Oh, very easy. Councilmember Kathy.
No report.
All right. Councilmember Von Holtz. Oh, just one second. There we go.
It's smart to silent that. Yesterday I attended the LEAD meeting, and it was a great meeting learning about all that's going on with LEAD in Thurston County. And on next week on the 27th from 11 to 1:30, there's going to be a virtual training related to True Blood. So if you're familiar with True Blood, it's a class action settlement with the federal courts and the Department of Social and Health Services for not getting people who are being held in custody, justice involved individuals who are not competent to represent themselves. And so there's a lot of work going on. This is implementation 3. And so if anyone's interested in that, you don't have to register. It's online and it's from 11 to 1:30.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Jefferson.
Yes, on the 7th of August, I attended the Thurston County 911 Communications meeting as a secondary for Councilmember Dahlhoff. We talked about the phone system replacement project. Project kickoff meeting was held on July 18th. An on-site assessment at TCOM took place on July 30th. And the project completion system cut over is planned for the second quarter 2025. They have some staffing challenges. The next telecommunicator academy is scheduled for October 24th. Currently, they have 7 vacancies to fill, and they're planning to hold 4 academies in 2025. At the Olympia and Beyond meeting, discussed the destination master plan next steps. And our annual meeting date is Thursday, September 17th in Tenino. Last week, Saturday, I attended the newly formed Thurston County NAACP. That's the first meeting to the community. The NAACP is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and it was formed in 1909. The mission was to advocate for Black people. Today, they advocate for equality and justice for all people. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Dahlhoff.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Jefferson, for going to TCOM for me while I was in Mexico. And I also attended the NAACP meeting this past Saturday, and I'm excited to see the coordination, collaboration, and partnership that can happen with the city of Tumwater. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Althauser.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, we've been attending work group meetings for the estuary. That's entailed continued negotiations, analysis, and development of the ILA that I believe we'll have a work session on maybe in the next month, 2 months or so. So a lot more to come there. We also, if folks are interested about some artistic renderings of what it could look like, those are readily available online, been documented in the Olympian and also on the website for Department of Enterprise Services. There's some really interesting renderings for what that could look like. I also attended the Regional Housing Council. It was a little while ago now, but I don't think we've had a meeting since that meeting. So at the risk of being redundant, I'll go ahead and give a brief report on that. We met on July 25th. And there were a few noteworthy items. We talked about the potential retreat, which I've discussed at our council meetings here before. We sort of narrowed the scope of what that might look like. We're still interested in holding some sort of function where we have a meeting to talk about the RHC's role in policy development, whether we want that organization to be empowered to make recommendations for jurisdictions about regional policies that deal with housing that cross jurisdictional lines. Things like affordable housing incentives, perhaps, or maybe tenant protections. Those are still pretty nascent conversations, but we think that it's important to have sort of a strategic gathering to where we can put our heads together to see if it makes sense for jurisdictions to try to get on the same page about some of these policies that affect all of us. We also heard a presentation about the Black Home Initiative. That's a regional effort to try to increase the number of first-time home buyers for Black homeowners by 1,500 by the year 2027. It's not just Thurston County. That's an effort that really spans the I-5 corridor. There's a number of jurisdictions, nonprofits in King County and Pierce County that have signed on. And we'll actually be hearing a presentation at our work session next week about what signing on to that initiative could mean. It's pretty aspirational but it's a pretty important goal that I'm pretty excited about. I'm excited that we'll be discussing it as well. We also talked about our manufactured home community proviso, I guess, for lack of a better term. We essentially directed staff to try to come up with some recommendations for us to be able to take action mid-year. A lot of what the RHC does is issue grants, or rather recommendations for grants for the county to take action on. We do that at a specific time every year. And that doesn't really address concerns when things like, for instance, a mobile home community park finds itself in crisis mid-year. So we've essentially set aside a chunk of that funding, I think 20% of that funding that we issue, to have available mid-year. So our discussion was about what form that could take specifically for assisting mobile home communities, whether that is assisting them with purchase of that community so that they could then become the owners, and what that might take in terms of financing. So that is a continued discussion. And then finally, we went through a crosswalk that staff have prepared that looks at different affordable housing incentives across different jurisdictional lines. So we're able to see what Lacey does, what Tumwater does, and what Olympia does. And we're able to see if there are any gaps or things where it makes sense where we could align. And sort of speaking from my hope for the next 6 to 12 months for the RHC, I think it would be really great if they do take that step to work into policy to see what it would look like to try to align those policies across jurisdictional lines so that we can remove those questions from development and make sure that we have incentives that make sense. And our next meeting is in about 2 weeks from now. That's my report.
Great, thank you. All right, that is all the council reports, and I do not believe we have any other business. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.